Good morning, everyone. 大家早安. Now, we're going to continue with our program, and we would be very grateful if the folks who are heading one way or the other could do so quietly. And we will get underway, and we'd be even happier if you'd all come forward and join our program, because there's something very wonderful about to happen here in the big top. So, this is a one-ring circus of stillness. So welcome to the next portion of our 30th anniversary celebration, and this morning we're blessed with, it's hard to introduce our Dharma friends as guests because they're very much like family, and when we visit their monastery at Abhayagiri, always feel like we blend together, as the Buddha said, like milk and water. So at the same time, because many of you are in fact fresh to the city of 10,000 Buddhas, it's important that we introduce the guests, and especially today's first speaker, and I'll do that right now. 我们继续把我们万佛圣城30周年的节目呢，继续放下去。那么各位呢，能尽量进来坐下，大家安静呢，那我们都可以继续介绍今天来的佛友和朋友。本来应该说是贵宾，可是他们并不算贵宾。我们常常跟Abhayagiri Forest Monastery 有来往的。他们穿的袈裟跟我们不一样了，可是呢，我们的心是一个的。我们去Abhayagiri的时候，我们佛就说像牛奶和水一样喝了，就不分别彼此。那么他们到了万佛城，已经不是贵宾。可是因为有的在座各位呢从不同的地方来了，不熟，所以我们必须要先介绍。So let me introduce to you today the monks from Abhayagiri Forest Monastery, including today the two co-abbots. And this morning we get to hear from Venerable Ajahn Amaro, and then at lunch we will hear from Venerable Ajahn Pasano, who is sitting in our loges seats today with his cultivating Sangha together with him. Ajahn Amaro is British originally, from Kent, and he studied psychology and physiology during his university years, and read the works of Rudolf Steiner, something I didn't know, and first brought forth an interest in things beyond the physical. And traveled to Asia, as young men are wont to do, and wound up in northeast Thailand, on the recommendation of people who said, if you want to find the Dharma, you can go to northeast Thailand. And he heard about Wat Pananachat, which is the international monastery in Thailand for Westerners. There's a place there that will take the Furong and the round eyes. And so Ajahn Amaro arrived at Wat Pananachat and instantly liked the monks, felt at home, and decided to stay. Became an anagarika, a trainee, and then a shramanera, left home novice, and received the full precepts from the Venerable Ajahn Chah in 1979. Stayed in Thailand for 2 years, came back to England, and joined Ajahn Sumedho at Chithurst Forest Monastery, which is a place that we have been going to since 1980, 82, 83, 83, I believe. My first visit to Chithurst and several visits since. And Ajahn Amaro also has an illustrious relative in the world of Buddhist studies. His surname before he left home was Horner, and anybody who has read the works of the Polytext Society knows about I.B. Horner. They're related by name but never actually met, but certainly carrying on that legacy. So another thing about Ajahn Amaro that many of you maybe have run into him before you actually saw his face through his writings. Because I first saw his book called Tudong, The Long Walk North, in 1984-85, because he was the first in England to carry on the Thai tradition of Tudong. Tudong is a pronunciation of Dutanga. Dutanga, as we know, is kuxing, is ascetic practice, and in the Thai version of that, it's a pilgrimage. Monks take up certain implements. They take up a tea kettle and an umbrella. Did you carry a tea kettle through England?
It's the water flask.
Water flask, right. And an umbrella, which is a glot, which is the tent that you sleep under at night. And he and a companion walked the length of England on Tudong, depending on people to make offerings. And this is a time when many people would look at this robe and not identify what this was at all. Don't know whether you're that other group that goes bang bang tiao tiao, as we say in Chinese, the Krishna group, or whether you're missing from an institution, or what your situation is. So he blazed the trail, was the pioneer in doing Tudong pilgrimages in England. Many monks and nuns have followed, including several nuns who did a Tudong in Ireland. And of course, the Irish being that way, maybe in this audience people don't know how Irish are, but I was told that the Catholic Irish populace saw the two nuns in their precept robes walking along, and they would say things like, "Oh, what are you doing? Can I feed you? What are you after all? Come on in, let me give you some tea. Do you eat things? Let me feed you here. Come on in, you must be religious." You know, and they would sit them, is that an exaggeration, or is that?
Close enough.
Close enough. I was told they were warmly welcomed. No matter that they were unrecognizable as Catholic nuns, they looked religious and probably needed something to eat. So come in. So Ajahn Amaro was responsible for blazing that trail of Tudong ascetic pilgrimages through Europe. And now they have gone, he'll tell you, perhaps, they've gone to Finland and the Baltic countries and Tudong, Latvia, Poland, doing a Tudong in Poland. So it is now a custom in Europe and Eastern Europe for Buddhist religious to go on walking pilgrimages. So in 1997, he was invited to take up residence and establish Abhayagiri Forest Monastery. Our neighbors? 96. He's also a good proofreader, I will add. I know that. So, here in California with Ajahn Pasano as co-abbot, and that is where he currently resides and teaches. And they are our neighbors in Redwood Valley, which is 20 miles north here. So his topic today, as I understand it, although he'll tell us in detail, is about the ongoing relationship between two Buddhist communities and all the ways that Venerable Master Shren Hua and Ajahn Sumedho found their connection, and what resulted from that connection that I was told extended to past lives, that they knew each other in lives past. So let me translate that briefly, and we'll invite Ajahn Amaro to address his remarks to us. 今天第一位讲者是 Ajahn Amaro， 他是英国人，他在读大学的时候就学心理学还有身体这个身体学哈。他去亚洲到马来西亚，就有人告诉他，泰国的东北部有一个地方可以收西方人来打坐。 他就去了，一到了这个 Wat Pananachat 就一见如故了，觉得好像自己已经住过那边，很喜欢。他就训练者，然后受沙弥戒，1979年就受具足戒，阿真查长老是他的剃度师傅。他在泰国住2年，然后回来英国，就跟斯梅多法师认识，在英国开始 Chithurst Monastery。他有个亲戚是 I.B. Horner 很有名的一个学者，佛教的学者，巴黎经文社的一个社长翻译者。1983年，他 Amaro 法师他自己做苦行，就托钵起誓，从英国的南边就走到北边了。从他一开始，现在呢，很多人就做一样的这些游行，这个 Tudong，在英国、欧洲各地，包括波兰，还有其他的地方。1996年，先跟帕萨诺法师到了加州，住在 Abhayagiri Forest Monastery， 就是我们邻居，离这里有20里路，到那边就建立道场了。所以呢，经常有机会跟我们接触来往。So I would like to now pass the microphone to Ajahn Amaro, and could we have a second mic that will facilitate the translating, Phil, if we get a chance? That we wanted to pass this one back and forth. So could we have a round of applause to welcome our guest Ajahn Amaro, Speaker Dharma.
So I'll begin by reciting the brief homage to the Buddha and Dhamma and Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. I'm very happy and honored to be invited to speak on this auspicious occasion, the 30th anniversary of the opening of the City of 10,000 Buddhas, and as you might have noticed from the very glorious hyperbolic introduction that Reverend Hengshe gave me, that also this is my 30th anniversary as a monk this year. 1979 was the year of my full ordination, so this is also a parallel in my life, that I opened my bhikkhu life the same year that Wang Fo Chang opened its doors to the world. Also, maybe just before I begin, I should also maybe correct a couple of Hengshe's remarks. That there were actually a couple of other monks who had gone on shorter Tudong walks in England before I did, and it was through being inspired by their example. They both walked for a week or two, and seeing that it could be done, then I asked for the opportunity to do that myself. But because I tend to be a bit of an extremist, whereas they walked for a week or two, I decided to walk across the entire length of England, and for a 3-month walk. And because I always seem to be happy to talk about myself, I was the one who wrote a book about it. Well, the other more humble monks restrained themselves. So.
本人觉得非常荣幸，有机会在这个吉祥的日子跟大家见面、讲话。其实我呢，你们如果注意，你们会听到我受比丘戒也是万佛城开幕那年、开光那年，所以我跟我比丘的生活跟万佛城开门是同一年了。 应该介绍的时候有几个地方是讲的不太清楚。我并不是第一个做图董，有几位法师在英国，他们做了几个礼拜的图董，知道是可以做的，我才来了。我呢，我是比他们长830里路，从英国的一边到英国的那边。他呢，因为好名，所以他写书。他们比较谦虚，知道修行，他们没有写，就是所以我是跟着他们，我不是第一个，那个要说清楚。
The connection between our two communities, the community of Ajahn Sumedho and the forest meditation tradition from Thailand, and this particular community. It began, at least in this lifetime, in 1981, when Ajahn Sumedho was visiting here in California. He was regularly invited to this country. He's an American by birth, and he was also invited to come and teach here by Jack Cornfield, who had been a monk with him in Thailand and was establishing a teaching center here. His parents also lived in California, so he took up the opportunity to come and teach and to see his family. And during that visit in 1981, a woman who had been a student of his, who was a professor at UC Berkeley, came to him one day and said, there's a monk you've got to meet in San Francisco, and it's really, really important. He's the best monk that there is in the whole Bay Area, and I can't let you leave California without having seen him. And at this point, Ajahn Sumedho had far more things than he really needed to do on his schedule already. And he also thought, visiting another senior monk, and he'd had experiences when he was in the university in Berkeley in the 1950s and early 60s, trying to find a Buddhist teacher. And he'd gone to Japanese temples and Chinese temples, and he'd never really been welcomed there as a foreigner, and they couldn't speak any English, and no one seemed to be remotely interested in meditation. So he thought, I'm going to be dragged along to another one of these awful temples, and we won't be able to understand each other, and then, oh well. But this woman, whose name was Ruth Inge Heinz, was insistent, and so he thought, okay, I'll submit. And then she took him along to the original Gold Mountain Monastery in the Mission District, the former mattress factory. And he said as soon as he and Master Xuanhua met, then he had an immediate sense of gratitude that he'd been brought there, and a tremendous feeling of affinity and a warmth, a closeness in Dhamma that really astonished him.
Mm. 题目今天我想讲的是我们两个机构、两个地方、两个道场的关系，是Sumedho还有泰国佛教传统跟宣化上人的关系。就是1981年开始，Ajahn Sumedho他们的长老是到了加州来，他本身是美国籍的，可是他已经不在美国了。他的父母就在这里。那个时候 ，Jack Cornfield 请 Sumedho 到 Spirit Rock 来，讲法。那个时候还有 Sumedho 一个学生叫 Ruth Inge Heinz， 他是 UC Berkeley 的教授。他对 Sumedho 长老就说：“这个湾区这里有一位出家人，你必须要见面，我不准你先回去了，你一定要跟他见面。”他是我们 Bay Area 最好的一个和尚。Sumedho 呢，他不想来，因为他在那个50、60那个时代，已经去了很多地方找善知识，要参访善知识。可是呢，每次是互相不了解，每次就是看不起西方人，或者根本不受欢迎，到那边去就冷冰冰的这样子，就叫他不来，不欢迎他。所以他已经那个经验太多了，他说：“哎呀，有一个地方就好像格格不入的。” 那个教授就说你必须要来，所以他好，他就降服了。他到了以前的金山寺去了，他一进门了，他觉得好像很舒服，他就有一种感激了，就觉得非常有缘分了。所以斯梅多法师说，他跟师父上人的关系呢，觉得他非常惊讶的。
When Ajahn Sumedho came back to England and rejoined the rest of us at Chithurst Monastery in Sussex, and he told us about this visit, he said something very impressive to us, something that was quite surprising. He said, all my life I thought I would never meet another monk like Ajahn Chah, and I just did. That there was a kind of uniqueness and a greatness in the presence of Master Xuan Hua that was really inspiring and gladdening to him. And also he was so touched, not just that Shifu's presence was so powerful and so wise and so good, but also that he was incredibly friendly and respectful. And in later years, Master Xuan Hua spoke about that first meeting, and he said, all my life I wanted to try and bring the northern and the southern traditions together, and I never thought I was going to be able to do it until I met Sumedho. So that was a kind of impactful moment there in the old Gold Mountain Monastery, when these two traditions flowed together. And as Reverend Heng Shui just said, that here at the City of 10,000 Buddhas, on one or two occasions, Master Hua would make a mention when Ajahn Sumedho was visiting that he and Ajahn Sumedho had practiced together in past lives, and this was one of the reasons for the profound affinities between them. Now, also from that occasion, Ajahn Sumedho brought back a lot of the publications, because as everyone knows, that Shifu was very dedicated to printing and translating the Dharma teachings into English and spreading them around the world. So he had many books and teachings of all different kinds that came back with him. So those of us in the monastery in England hungrily devoured many of those Dhamma books and became very, very inspired with Shifu's teachings.
Sumedho 法师会去英国，到了 Chithurst 就很热心的跟我们分享他的经验。到了金山寺认识宣化上人，他说：“你知道呢，我一辈子追求善知识。他说我刚刚认识，除了阿占察长老之外呢，就是我可以说我的最得意的、最求的一位长老就是宣化上人。我想不到世界上有第二个。”像阿占察长老，他说，就是他们两个是我心目中最特别的、最有德行的大的高僧。他说，在他的面前，你都会觉得很大的启发的作用。而且呢，令我最感动就是宣化上人不但有大智慧，而且他自己很 friendly， 他很友善的，很尊敬的态度，所以。以后我们听过这个宣化上人说第一次认识这个 Sumedho 的时候，师父上人就说这句话，他说我一辈子就有一个愿力，这个愿力呢是我必定要把南传北传汇合。可是我觉得我这辈子可能办不到的，没有这个机会。他说认识 Sumedho 之后，我知道果然就会成就了。就是有这个可能性，就是南传北传两条河就流起来了，流一起了。还有几次我们知道宣化上人提到这一点，他说在过去。在前生，我和 Sumedho 法师 是曾经做通参道友，就是有前生的缘分跟苏梅斗法师，所以这个缘分是很深的。还有呢，我们的长老苏梅斗回来英国那天，他就带来很多书籍，就是我们法界佛教总会出版的佛经书，苏梅斗就带回来，流通让我们看了。那我们英国的法师们呢，就把它非常有兴趣，把它们读了，因为这是真正的佛法。那些书呢，到现在很稀有的，所以苏梅斗那次回来了，给我们看了，我们就虎吞狼藉，怎么说？虎狼吞迹啊？怎么说？狼吞虎咽的吃，并没有吃就看了。I'm describing the way there's an idiom that says the way you devour Dharma books is that you're like wolves and tigers gulping meat down. But I get it wrong every time, so I have to check it.
Yes, like wolves and tigers, we gobbled that down. And it was really inspiring to hear was that Master Xuanhua, one of the reasons he was so friendly and interested to make a connection with Ajahn Sumedho was because he was very impressed with the standard of Vinaya discipline that we tried to embody in our community, and he wished to try and inculcate that, to cultivate and help to introduce that into the community that he was part of. So during that time, also through the visits of Reverend Heng Shure and Heng Chao in 1983, then a connection built up. And also, one of the things that really impressed us was that shortly after Ajahn Sumedho came back from that trip, a check arrived in the mail from Master Xuanhua, which contained the largest cash donation that the monastery had ever received. That we weren't quite sure whether it was real at first. Never seen a check for $5,000 before, but that was the biggest amount of money, because we were very poor. We lived in a broken down old Victorian mansion that we were fixing up in slow stages, and so this was a very powerful way of Shifu cementing, no pun intended, the the relationship between us, and it helped us to do many repairs on the building. So during those years, I became very inspired and did a lot of wolfing down of the teachings. And so I tried to follow many of the standards that were kept within this community, as well as our own Dhutanga practices. And this developed over a number of years. I kept the practice of not lying down for several years, and would observe many of the food restrictions and so forth, that this community cultivates and uses as ongoing practices, until I found myself becoming a kind of undercover City of 10,000 Buddhas monk. Sort of covert practices. And during that time, and I was living up in the north, I'd walked from our monastery in the south of England through a windy route all the way up to the monastery in the north, near the Scottish border. And at that time, I had a dream of Shifu. I had several very clear and helpful, significant dreams of him. And during this, what I remember as the first dream, he very clearly appeared and spoke in very good English, with an English accent, of course. And what he said was, "Bright, loud, and mobile is the false, subtle and indistinct is the true." And then I woke up, from the dream, not from samsara. So that really had an impact on me. I thought, well, what does that mean? And so I picked that up and reflected on it, and had all kinds of ideas about what it might be pointing to. But it was obviously a clear message. And so I reflected and pursued that. But it must have not got through to me clearly enough what I now, in retrospect, guess what the dream, what that particular dream was about. Because in a way, what I feel it was pointing to was that I was attaching to the external characteristics of, say, this tradition or this community or these practices, and I wasn't really noticing the essence, the subtle and indistinct heart of the Dhamma itself. And so a little later on, I had another dream. And so maybe as a preface to this, Ajahn Sumedho had just come back from a visit to Thailand, and he was talking about some travels that he had made there, visiting some of the branch monasteries of northeast Thailand. And he also was recounting times past when he'd been to visit the monastery of Luang Pu Khao in earlier years, and I think he'd been traveling with Ajahn Chah at that time. And on that occasion, they're visiting this very venerable old disciple of Ajahn Mun, Luang Pu Khao. He described how when he was receiving visitors, he would give them this wonderful Dhamma talk, wonderful teachings on loving kindness and wisdom. And at the end of this Dhamma talk, the people asked for the spittoon. Like, I don't know what the Chinese word for that is, but that he would spit his betel nut into, and he'd been clipping his fingernails and dropped them into the spittoon along with the saliva and juice from his betel nut and other kind of garbage. And so then at the end of this wonderful Dhamma talk, amazing, fine and beautiful teachings, then the lay people asked for his spittoon so they could keep his chewed betel nut and his nail clippings. And he tried to persuade them that it was much more important that they took the Dharma away with them, and that this was the significant thing, but they really wanted his garbage to make into kind of mementos or sacred medallions for themselves. And so after they'd left, then he made this comment to Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Sumedho. He said, it's amazing, isn't it, how living beings are, how people are, that you offer them these liberating teachings, and all they want is your leavings, your debris. Aren't people strange? So that's the preface. And then in this second dream I had of Shifu, where I hadn't got the point, I think that the first one was a bit too subtle. And I needed something louder. So in this second dream that I had, Shifu appeared, and again spoke in very good English, and he said, he kind of appeared very clearly and looked at me and said, "Do you want my toenails?" And then disappeared. So I woke up from that one and I thought, right. I think I'm beginning to get the message here. And I realized that it was a helpful teaching that insofar as I was attaching to these external forms and practices and looking at that as being the important and essential thing, and I was really missing that it's actually the heart that those practices lead to and help to awaken that is the significant thing, and that really it was more important for me to be true to my own practices, my own tradition, my own community, rather than trying to have some kind of surreptitious, secret monastic life that I had to keep hidden from everyone else around me. And that Shifu's appearance in these dreams was saying, wake up, what are you doing? You don't have to be a kind of undercover monk, just follow your own practices, train yourself in the appropriate way, and don't cultivate these stupid attitudes of secrecy. Just do what you do as a monk of the Southern School, and you'll be fine.
在1983年，亨氏、亨超两个去 Chitters， 所以我们两个地方的关系更深。还有师妹的回来那次，我们收到一张支票，这个支票呢是我们到那个时候最大的一个供养，就是从万佛城从宣化上人寄来的一个支票呢，5000块钱。哇，那个是我们不知道，我们一看了都不知道是不是真的，那么多钱，所以我们在那个时候就修补一个古老的一个房子在 Sussex 那边，所以那个钱呢是帮助我们把那个修改了，帮助很多。 那个时候我们读一读法总出的书籍，我特别感动，我就想学习万佛城的家风一些横门，我就几年就也不捣蛋，我就跟着万佛城的吃饭的饮食的方式，可是呢，我这想做呢，不是公开的做的，是偷偷着做的，因为我们道场呢，不是大乘佛法的，所以呢，我自己就做一个好像特务的和尚 ，undercover monk 可以这么说吗？特务 undercover monk 应该怎么说？特务哈，便衣的和尚啊，我就对了，偷偷的。那个时候，我 secret agent，right？ 我是从英国的南边就托钵骑士到北边去了。我们那个时候南边还有个道场，就靠近苏格兰的国家的边际。我们另外一个我是都到那边。那个时候我就梦见宣化上人。宣化上人在梦里边。这个奇怪呢，是因为我梦见所看到的宣化上人讲的一口流利的英文，他还有英国的地方口音，跟我们一样的，他就说 bright, loud and mobile is the false, and subtle, indistinct, false. Let's see, subtle, indistinct, and indistinct is the truth. 就说 is true, is the true. 师父对我讲的话呢，就说假的是很明显，又大声又移动，那是假的；真的呢是很微妙，很不清，模糊不清。就是这两句话，我就反省到底什么意思。我可能听不太清楚什么意思。可是慢慢的，我觉得师父的意思是说，如果我呢，身为一个南传的法师，就好像偷偷着不让人知道我是学习大乘佛法的习惯，这个方法呢，可能就是只做外向。我并没有拿到一个中心这个道理。然后我另外梦到宣化上人。等一等，我就讲清楚。斯梅多法师那个时候回去泰国，他就做一些分支道场。有一位长老叫龙坡靠，他是阿珍mun的一个弟子，就是泰国的修行的长老。他们就到龙坡靠那个地方，那个长老那个时候给一些居士讲佛法。讲的头头是道，讲的很好，大家很喜欢。讲的一些道理呢，慈悲啊，讲的一些修行的方法呢，那个大家都发喜了。可是呢，就那个时候，这些居士呢，他们要求什么 ？spittoon 怎么讲？那是一个桶，就放垃圾，如果你嚼槟榔，你就是痰桶。那个时候是法师需要的，因为那个长老他有嚼槟榔的习惯，哇，常常吐了这样子。然后呢，他的手指甲会剪放在那个痰桶，还有一些垃圾呢，就是放在那边。那些居士呢，他们要离开之前，他们说：“长老，可不可以把痰桶里边的东西交给我们？我们带回去了。”哦，你看，那个长老他说：“哎，众生就这样子颠倒，我把佛法交给他们，请他们带回去，他们不愿意。可是所吐的吐米呢，剪指甲、手指甲呢，他们都弹了，他们了，就是众生颠倒。所以史梅多告诉我那个经验，我觉得那个是对我很有用的，因为我漏一句了。”那些居士，他们愿意把那个手指甲什么的，他们带回去放在一个 amulet， 就是一个符，护身符，他们这样子迷信啊。所以 就说我讲给他们的佛法，他们如果能用呢，都会得到解脱了。可是他们都是谈着我的垃圾啊！你看众生是这样颠倒，所以我听到那个故事之后呢，我又做第二个梦。第二个梦呢是宣化上人回来，他也讲英文，可是他可能觉得他第一个梦托给我是太微妙的，太不好懂了，所以这次不同了。师父呢就对我说：“你还是要我的手指甲吗？”这样子讲得很清楚了，那个我可以听得懂，所以我就我明白，我就是只照外相，我是忽略那个法的真正的意思，所以就说如果明白法的扼要呢，我就可以觉悟了。我身为一个南传的法师，我的 community 好，应该这样子用这个显道，不用这个密道。不用这个秘密的方法，那不是佛法。所以我就从那个时候不做特务的和尚，我就要公开的修行。
So in the years after that, I had a much more balanced practice, and also after 1990, I had from then on I had the chance to visit here in California, and we had the idea of opening up a branch monastery, and so during those years I would come from England for a few months, stay here in California and travel in the United States and teach. And during those times, then I was very honored and happy to have the chance to come and pay respects to Shifu and to visit here City of 10,000 Buddhas and also the other branches that had opened up. And so during those years, the community that was inviting us, they gathered together the resources and the organization to help a branch monastery to open. But we'd had some difficulties in our community in Britain and some fragmentation in the Sangha. People had left the robes, and so there was an uncertainty about whether we were really ready to open up a new monastery or not. That people wanted to wait until the Sangha was a bit more well settled. And so it wasn't until 1995 when we had a meeting in Amaravati in England, and the community finally decided, okay, well things seem to be settled down now, and we're very happy for you to go ahead and take up the invitation of the lay community in California and to start looking for land so that you can open up a new branch monastery there. So that meeting took place on May the 31st, 1995. And on the morning of June the 1st, the next day, one of the senior monks called me into his room and he said, "Oh, we just got a call from Ajahn Sumedho in California. He's been down visiting Master Hua, who's really sick. He's just offered us 120 acres of land in Northern California. What do you think of that?" So I thought, I must admit, my first thought was, Master Hua is pretty quick. Less than a day after we got permission to look for land, he provides it from his deathbed. And Reverend Heng Shu was down there at that time with Ajahn Sumedho, and he can tell probably a little bit more of the story. But it was a wonderful gift from Shifu to help us to start the monastery. And the outcome was that exactly 1 year later, June the 1st, 1996, we opened up Abhayagiri Monastery, and we've existed in a close and fruitful friendship with Wangpo Chang, a City of 10,000 Buddhas, and the other branch monasteries very gratefully ever since. And so our gratitude today is a day to reflect upon gratitude and renewal. So our presence, Abhayagiri Monastery's presence, where we are in our beautiful quiet valley, and the very fact that we could be here and to have established ourselves to the degree that we have is very much due to the generosity and extraordinary kindness of Venerable Master Xuan Hua, and also the timeliness of his gift. You know, when I tell that story about him being the one who gave us the land, and how it was less than a day after the Sangha agreed to approve of us opening up a new place that people, they look like, oh, come on. Because they know I'm prone to exaggeration and hyperbole myself. But it's absolutely true. That's the way it worked. And Master Xuanhua was extremely ill at that time. And so it's even more amazing that gift was made right at that moment, and that our gratitude is immense. And we try to do our best to repay that gratitude through living in a way that Shifu would be happy with, that he would be pleased to see, and to be conducting ourselves in a way that honors his own faith and generosity and his kindness in making the gift. I'll close my remarks there for today.
以后呢，我自己把我的修行的方式稍微平衡，保持平衡。1990年，我有机会先到美国来，我们那个时候就想做一个分支道场立在美国，可是没机会了。1990年，我先到美国来，有机会到了万佛圣城来亲自拜见宣化上人，在那个时候，我们英国的佛教团体就慢慢的建立一些分支道场，可是我们僧团里边有一点不稳定，就有的时候就分散了，所以就觉得那个时候不适合开一个新的道场。然后呢，等到1995年了，我们的僧团比较稳定，我们所有的方丈长老开会。在英国，我们开一个长老大会。那个会议呢，我们说可以了，现在时间到了，我们可以在美国开一个分支道场。现在因缘成熟了，我们可以了。就那天是5月31号，1995年5月31号就这样决定。刚好第二天6月初1那年，有一个法师。就叫我过来，他说刚刚收一份电话，就是斯梅多法师在加州，他跟宣化上人在一起。他说，宣化上人准备把120亩地在加州捐给我们为建立道场。他说你觉得怎么样啊？我说，哎呀，宣化上人脑子真的很快，很灵活。他的行动那么灵活，就说我们第一天决定可以建立道场，第二天已经有120亩地了。所以呢，宣化上人实在是就是说对机斗教，因病下药了，他就知道时候。所以我有的时候好了，就说，所以我们就其实是我本人翻译人，跟随斯梅多法师到了洛杉矶。那个时候师父上人就在病床，很不舒服了。可是他就吩咐斯梅多要下来，如果他愿意接受呢，斯梅多说好，他说 Ajahn Sumedho at that time, I remember he said, all right. Yes, I accept, he said. 好。He's very happy, very happy. 所以然后呢，就再过1年，1996年，我们在阿拜吉里就接受了，就开幕了。就是我们2个机构的关系了，就又有下根。所以今天是一天可以回顾，然后展望。就是说我们在阿拜吉里那个非常安静、非常合适的一个山谷建立我们的道场，就应该说完全依靠宣化上人的 大的开放的这个大方的这种布施，所以我们非常感激，是真的。而且呢，我讲那个故事，我知道这个时间那个 timing 这个机缘呢，那个是很巧妙。有的人就说：“哇，你讲故事会讲得过分一点。”我说不会的，我知道是第一天开会得到许可去美国建立道场，第二天就受到上人的这个礼物呢，我觉得太巧了，一定是师父的智慧。所以我们说就是这样子。那么因为上人把120亩地的礼物呢送到我们那块地呢，所以我们是感激万分，是真的。我们要报上人的恩德呢，怎么做呢？我们就是要做和尚的，做出家人，要过一种他会赞成，他会鼓励我们的生活，要跟着戒律，就每天修行，就是这样子，想报宣化上人的恩的一部分。好了，那么今天讲话就到此为止。阿弥陀佛。Did you say Ami Tofu at the end? I don't. Maybe I added that. That's okay. So, I think I added that. So that was me. But the intent was there. So, right. Excellent. Let's see. Actually, at this moment, my job was to introduce Dharma Master Heng Chur. And as I scan briefly, I don't see Dharma Master Heng Chur. So we will move forward, certainly. And do we know? Yes, Dharma Master Liang is here, and she was the next person introduced. So could we do that? Would that be all right? All right. So we have heard from Ajahn Amaro, and you should all know that he is a speaker much in demand, not only in America and Europe, but around the world. And we have the blessing of hosting at the Berkeley Monastery, down in Berkeley, once a month, called First Tuesday nights, when either Ajahn Amaro or Ajahn Pasano, or occasionally guest monks. We've had Ajahn, most recently Ajahn Liam was there, who is the chief abbot of Wat Papong in Thailand. And Ajahn Jumnien comes on occasion, and occasionally I get to substitute. But it's a great opportunity for us to benefit from the Dharma teachings of the monks of Abhayagiri Forest Monastery. So that will be happening, by the way. Do a little shameless advertising here. That will be happening on Tuesday night, today being Sunday. If you're in the Bay Area, do come to the Berkeley Monastery at 7:30, because Ajahn Amaro will be speaking, and he will be bringing with him several of his Dharma brothers. So it'd be a good opportunity to hear an extended Dharma talk, including some meditation at first. So that's 7:30 at the Berkeley Monastery on Tuesday night. 我说阿摩罗法师呢，他是很受欢迎的一位章法的人士，他蛮有幽默呢。
Good morning. Dharma Master Shur's kind introduction has left me speechless. Before I begin, I would like to thank Ajahn Amaro for his wonderful talk. His descriptions of the dreams and the words that Shifu said sound so much like Shifu. I found it very, very touching and inspiring.
大家早安。施法师他刚才对我的介绍呢，让我无言以对。那我首先想要谢谢阿张阿摩罗，他讲的这么好的这个演讲因为他在叙述他的梦境，讲上人给他的梦境的时候呢，他讲的这个上人就是我们想象中的上人这样非常的相像。
The topic that has been given to me is a very broad topic. It was Shifu's vision of education. So I've prepared a talk so that I won't waste your time. In the summer of 1976, a practice session was held at the city of 10,000 Buddhas. And I especially remember the year because it was the 200th anniversary of the United States. It was 1976. And at that time, the Venerable Master announced the opening of Dharma Realm Buddhist University at CTDB, and he offered it tuition-free to American citizens as a present, as a birthday present to the United States. In case you're wondering, that gift of free tuition has since expired. That same year, he also founded Instilling Goodness and Developing Virtue Schools at the city of 10,000 Buddhas.
所以我的题目呢，的这个是非常的广的，就是讲上人呢对教育的愿景。所以我已经先把我所要讲的准备好了，所以我们就不浪费时间。在1976年的暑假呢，我们在万佛圣城有这个修行的一段时间。那我特别记得那一年呢，是美国的独立的200周年。那上人他就说，这个我们要把这个法界佛教大学要开幕，还有这个学费呢都要给这个美国人呢都完全免费，所以这就是给美国200周年的这一个纪念的一个礼物，一个生日礼物。那如果你在想说OK， 所以你如果在想，那这个礼物现在还有没有效呢？这个免费的这个免费的学费的这个礼物呢，其实它已经失效了，它已经过期了。那同一年呢，上人也创办了玉良小学跟培德中学在万佛城。
Several years later, when the Mountain Gate was erected, the Venerable Master had carved plaques installed over the arches of the gate. In the front central arch, it reads City of 10,000 Buddhas. On the north front arch, it reads Tathagata Monastery. And on the southern arch, it reads Dharma Realm Buddhist University. You might not have noticed that when you're leaving the city, over the 3 arches, there are also 3 plaques. And the central one reads teaching and protecting all nations, educating for outstanding abilities, and adorning with precepts and dharma. This was and is the Venerable Master's statement, carved in stone, that the city of 10,000 Buddhas is a place where cultivation and education go hand in hand. Of this, then, there should be no doubt.
所以在几年以后，当我们把山门建立起来的以后，上人呢就在这个山门的3个拱门上呢雕刻了这一些字。在万佛城中间的这个拱门呢，他写万佛城，中间的拱门写万佛城，旁边左边写如来寺，右边写法界大学。那如果你开车呢从万佛城离开的时候呢，你也会看到这个3个拱门上面呢也有题字，在中间是写教化万邦，在左边是写教育英才，右边是写戒法庄严。所以这个就是对我们来说，这个就是一个叙述，就是上人呢他希望把教育跟修行的理念并进的这个理念呢，把它刻在石头上。所以这个对我们来说，这个应该是无所怀疑的。
One of the Venerable Master's primary missions in coming to the West was to reform and renew education. Education had become in this country at best the accumulation of artifacts of knowledge. This kind of education he often referred to as garbage collecting. At its worst, schools had become job training facilities, and college students chose majors according to professions they thought could earn them the most money when they graduated. Children and young adults were no longer taught the essential human virtues, in the educational process. And this type of education was designed for a consumer society in which a person's success in life was measured by how much wealth, how much fame, how many objects of desire one could accumulate and possess before one died. The purpose of life was to buy things. And people were raised to consume. And this type of education was surely bringing the human race and the planet to a point of extinction. So in order to save lives, something had to be done. And Shifu chose education, the reform of education to do that.
所以上人来到西方的其中的一个目的呢，是希望能够改革教育，因为教育呢，在美国来讲，一直都是知识的累积而已。那这种教育呢，通常呢，我们都说它只是收集垃圾。那在最坏的方面来讲呢，学校呢只是变成一个工作训练的一个机构。所以大学学生他们在选他们的主修的时候，都是根据他们将来能够毕业以后呢，能够赚多少钱的这一种职业呢为主。所以小孩子呢，或者是年轻人呢，都对人基本的这种道德呢，他们都没有受到这种道德的熏陶。所以这种的教育呢，在我们的这一个消费者的社会里面呢，只是说我们的一个人的生活，我们有多么的成功，我们只是用我们有多少的财、多少的名、多少的物质的这个由欲望所引申的物质的这种积聚呢，来衡量这个人到底他成不成功然后就是在他死之前，他到底有多少财产，我们用这样的方法来衡量这个人在社会上成不成功。所以我们呢一直就是在这种购买跟消费的这种基本的观念下呢成长的。这样子的教育呢，其实会把整个我们这个地球上的人类呢趋向灭亡的这一个地步。所以我们如果要救人类的话呢我们必须要做一些事情。
The Venerable Master revealed to us that in chasing after empty, superficial gain, much of the human potential had been covered over, and that we human beings are actually, among the myriad creatures, the most wonderful and efficacious. Yes, we can be extremely clever and create all sorts of strange machines and technological inventions. But in doing that, we create more problems for ourselves and for the planet. And we miss out on the essence of what it is to be a human and end up aimless, unhappy, and confused. And so the Venerable Master connected us with the wisdom and virtues of old that had been forgotten or neglected and awakened us to our own potential. He applied a variety of skillful methods to teach and transform us. At the elementary level, children are instilled with the most essential human virtue, filiality. This filiality is not only the caring respect for our parents and the wish to repay their kindness, but it extends to kindness toward those younger than us, fraternity toward our peers, and respect toward our teachers, and a sense of responsibility to society, to the country, and to the world. At the Bodhisattva level, this sense of filiality extends to all living beings.
所以上人呢就告诉我们呢，我们需要改变我们的生活方式，不要再追求那些表面上虚幻的这种得失而且这个尤其是我们是这个人类，是万物之灵，是最灵感的。所以如果人类他说人类呢其实是非常非常的聪明，我们也能够制造或者是发明各种不同的机器，以及科技上的一种发明。 但是我们当在发明这些东西的同时呢，我们也为我们自己带来更多的问题，制造更多的问题，也为这个地球带来更多的问题。那基本上呢，我们就没有我们基本上呢就错失了我们一个人应该做的根本。我们会变得更毫无目标，更不快乐，然后更迷惑。所以上人呢就用这个古人的智慧呢，将我们呢跟古人连接，将这个跟道德连接起来，把我们的原有的这种潜能呢，还有我们的这种觉性呢连接起来。所以他用很多的这种不同的方便的方法来教化我们。在这个小学的这个阶段，孩子们呢就应该要培育最基本的人类的一个道德，就是孝顺。那这个孝顺呢，并不是只有说我们关心或者是爱护我们的父母而已，但是也希望呢能够报他们的恩。那这种报恩的方法呢，也延伸到对比我们还要幼小的众生里面，或者是跟我们的同辈也是这样子延伸，乃至呢我们尊敬我们的老师，对社会呢有一种责任感，那对国家这种责任感也包括对国家或对世界的一种责任感。从往菩萨道的这个方面、这个层次来讲呢，这个孝顺的这个道德呢，就延伸到所有的众生身上。
In secondary school, the emphasis is on developing character, so that by the time a student graduates from high school, he or she has a sense of self-respect and of purpose in life. Rather than simply being yet another insatiable consumer, these young people are inspired to contribute to and benefit the world. At the next level, the university level, the Venerable Master emphasized tapping into our inherent wisdom and sharpening our faculties so that we could distinguish reality more clearly, which of course is a much higher level of education than simply the accumulation of facts. To do this, he taught a series called Developing Inherent Wisdom and applied a variety of skillful teaching methods for sharpening our so-called Dharma selecting eye.
所以在中学呢，我们强调在培他们的德，也就是学生呢，如果从高中毕业以后呢，他能够有一种可以尊重自己的这一种感觉，就是还有知道我们生活的目的到底是什么，不是只有变成一个很不满足的一个消费者。所以这些年轻人呢，也都被启发来贡献他们的能力给这个社会。所以在另外一个阶段再往上走，如果在大学的这个阶段呢，上人他非常的强调呢，开发我们本有的智慧，还有让我们的这个根器呢更能够犀利，我们更能够有这个观看或者是关照实相的这个能力。那这就是我们的教育的更高的一层这个标准，不是只有说我们学习呢只是一种知识的积聚而已。那如果要达到这样呢，上人呢他就教导我们做这个推动我们的主观智能，就是主观智能推动力。上人用种种的方便呢来教导我们，然后还有使我们的这个责法眼呢更加的犀利。
Shifu often said that this kind of education is the best national defense, the best contribution to society, and the most effective way to help people improve their lives. It is, as was said yesterday by David Rounds, this kind of education helps us to recognize who we really are and teaches us how to become good people. And this sets the foundation for Buddhahood.
所以这一种的教育呢，其实就是最好的国防，对社会最好的贡献，也就是帮人们改进他们生活最有效的方法。所以昨天呢David Brown 有讲说，这个就是让我们呢能够觉知我们到底是谁然后让我们怎么样教导我们当一个好人，然后为这个成佛呢打下一个很好的基础。
Shifu had a great vision for the university. that in the future you would become a contemporary Nalanda, as respected as Harvard. Obviously, we are not there yet, and it will take many, many people and very much work and effort for his vision to be realized. Over the years of his teaching, the Venerable Master demonstrated time and time again that the only thing limiting us is our own fear, our own selfishness, and our own minds. So as recipients of his unfailing compassion, we can only press on together so that one day his vision will be realized.
所以上人呢也有对这个大学呢，他也有很大的愿景。他说希望在未来呢，我们就大学呢就会是一个现代的那烂陀大学，跟这个哈佛大学名望一样的高。所以很明显的呢，如果我们要达到这个目标呢，我们需要很多的人力，还有很多的努力，才能够实现他的愿景。所以在上人的这个这么多年的教导之下呢，他一次又一次的呢展现，又告诉我们呢，其实会限制我们达到这个目标呢，就只是因为我们的恐惧、我们的自私以及我们的心。所以呢，因为由上人这一种慈悲呢，我们受到这种教导，我们只能说呢，我们要努力的前进，早一天能够这个达到他的愿景。
Okay, 阿弥陀佛。
阿弥陀佛。
That this would be a really good opportunity for some of you to ask questions of our two speakers. Ajahn Amaro, I'm sure, I don't think I'm exaggerating in saying that he would be happy to talk about any of the issues of being a Westerner in precept robes, or of the joining of two traditions, the North and the South, or any other topic that deals with cultivation and the Dharma. And also, Dharma Master Heng Liang has been on the front lines of education here, Buddhist education, for years and years, and knows all the details. So I would like to open the floor to any friendly questions, sincere questions that people might have, and would be happy to moderate the questions and answers. 我说这个是良好的机会呢。这个阿摩罗法师呢，他是一个西方人，就30年了，做比丘，他很有经验了，他很愿意答复各位的问题。如果有诚心的问的，对于修行方面、佛法方面，衡量法师呢，他是跟上人的对于教育的眼光抱负呢，很多年了，他是很多经验了，所以如果各位呢想提问，对于他们两位呢一些问题呢，我相信他们都乐意的接受答复。Anybody care to open some questions to our two speakers this morning? I shouldn't ask, is there anybody? I should answer, who wants to be first? I know you have questions, so.
I'll go first.
All right.
This question was raised last night, and we didn't have time to cover it. 这个问题呢是昨天晚上有一个居士问的，就是说我们在修行的时候怎么样精进和这个中不要过头是有一个什么样的分别？就是怎么样修行可以中道，不要过度。So the question was, what is the line between vigor and extremity? How do you cultivate vigorously but you don't go over?
This is a very good question. How do we find the line between what is just an extreme and what is their wise application of effort? And so there's a variety of different teachings that you find in the Pali tradition on this, and also just out of a personal experience. And particularly there's what's called the four iddhipada, or what's known as the four bases of success. So this is about how we go about doing anything that we want to do. This is one of the aspects of practicing right effort. So the four iddhipadas, the four bases of success. So this is if you want to succeed as a Buddhist monastic, whether you want to succeed in business, whether you want to succeed as a soldier, or whatever you want to do. It's in all different dimensions of our lives. So the first thing is chanda, and chanda means interest or enthusiasm, zeal. There has to be a quality of turning the mind towards something and saying, "Oh, what is that? Yes," like the now famous "Yes, we can." You know, that of Barack Obama is that is expressing chanda. Is interest. Yeah, we can do it. So chanda is the first of the four iddhipadas. So to succeed in our practice, we need to be interested in it. The second is virya. Virya is the quality of energy, the actual application. So once you're interested, then you've got to plug in and switch on. You know, so that to apply effort. And to engage with your cultivation, whether it's doing recitations, reciting mantras, memorizing sutras, or sitting up, trying to practice Chan through the night for 70 days in a row, as the actual application of energy is virya. But involved in that also is the third element, which is citta, which in this instance means thinking about what it is that you're trying to do. So asking yourself the question, okay, what am I trying to do? How do I want to go about doing it? What's going to be the way to bring this to a quality of success, to completion? What do I need to do to make this work? So reflecting, considering about how to apply that effort rather than just aiming at a spot and pushing at it vigorously. And then the last element, which is in a way the subtlest, but the most important, is called vimamsa. And vimamsa means reviewing, or looking back at the results of what you've done. Okay, what's the result of that? Okay, well, I've put forth this effort, and I tried in this way. Well, did it work? With this recitation, does it work? Or this meditation practice, with these studies? What's the result of all the effort that I put in? Was I pushing in the right place? Because sometimes when we put our effort into something and we don't succeed, or we're not getting the result that we want, then the instinct or the habit is to apply what Ajahn Sumedho would refer to as more of the same wrong thing. This is a good phrase to remember. Yeah, is it just more of the same wrong thing? I'm trying really hard, I'm pushing, and I'm not getting through. Well, just push harder. And so we keep pushing, and we keep meeting resistance. I'm just not trying hard enough. I've got to keep pushing. So this might be whether it's with your studies, or your meditation, or your family life, or your business, or whatever. And so what these other aspects of applying wisdom to the whole process is that sense of citta, thinking about what you're doing. What you're doing. Well, I'm trying to get through this wall. I'm not succeeding. So then to take that into account, and then to think again, to look again, and then to step back. Say, oh look, there's a door over there. If I just walk 6 feet to my left and try the door, it'll be a lot easier to get through. Right here, I'm just pushing at this wall, and it's like I'm looking at the back wall of the Buddha hall there, and you just keep pushing and pushing. Oh, I'm just not getting through. I've got to just try harder. I've got to keep pushing harder. But it's a concrete wall. And more effort is just going to reap, as the Buddha put it, it will just reap trouble and weariness. No good effect. But if you apply those qualities of reflection, consideration, and reviewing, saying, I'm trying really hard, this is the hardest I can work, this is not working, then to to see that we can step back, consider, and oh look, there's a doorway. If I walk up to the door, turn the handle, walk through, I get to the other side. And even though I wasn't sweating and grinding my teeth and groaning, I've managed to arrive at that the wished for place. So that in applying energy and vigor and knowing when it's too much or it's just extremism, just to apply that same kind of consideration, that reflection and reviewing, like, well, what's the result of it? Am I just making myself exhausted and irritable, hell to live with? Yeah. Or is there virtues and benefits and blessings that come from this? And what's the result? And then consciously being guided by that result, not to be weak-willed or irresolute, but just to apply wisdom. Because this is in a way what caused the Buddha to find the middle way, when he realized, when he had fasted to the point of emaciation and starvation and keeled over unconscious, he realized it's not possible to put more effort than this in. I know the limit to which feeling goes. You can't experience more discomfort than this, but I haven't experienced any kind of liberation on account of this. Therefore, maybe I should apply my efforts in a different way. Right there, he used vimamsa. This isn't working. Now, what am I getting wrong? And then he had the insight into the middle way, to the perfectly, in some stories, that he heard the sound of a musical instrument and then realized, it's just like a musical instrument. Too tight is sharp, too slack is flat. But when it's tuned right, then all is good.
Okay. The first is, what's the Pali for the number one? Chanda. 四入一组中文，你们清楚吗？So the 就说在巴利文呢，什么叫极端，什么叫中道呢？我们就知道这个四入一组，四入一组这个法，你这个道理呢是看你做任何事情都一样的道理。你明白四入一组的作用，你就会了。第一呢叫chanda，就说有意思、有信心。你如果有意思、有兴趣呢，那你就说发兴趣呢，你就这样做了，那就对了。好像谁呢？就说奥巴马 ，Yes we can， 就是这个。我感兴趣了，那要做。第二呢 ，virya 就是精进呢，你就要你知道要这样做呢，你就开始要开始做。第三呢，就是citta，就是意。那个 citta， 你就说我要考虑一下，我不是单单往前冲，我应该考虑怎么做，那就对了。第四呢，你要这个是虑，你要反省，我做的对不对？到底是不是这样做？有没有成功？我加力是不是挣到好处呢？如果有的话呢，那就得到四入一组的作用。所以呢，你做事情都可以这样子用智慧，就说我愿意穿过这个墙，有个墙壁，我想穿出去了，可是这个墙壁是这个水泥钢铁做的，我就上前冲了，就用头打那个墙壁了，出了大汗了。想不到再过6尺呢，有个门。看那个门，你如果就打开那个门，你不必出那么多力，就可以穿过那个墙壁了，就到那边去了。所以你就思考，我可以在这边继续向前冲，我可以用开那个门，就达到目的地了。所以呢，这个四入一组就是这样用的。那么佛陀呢，他最初呢就太过分了。就不吃饭了，结果呢就不能用功，就疲倦了。然后呢，他就吃饭吃到中道了，用中道了，他就成功了，所以得到解脱了。所以我们用四入一组就知道什么叫极端，什么叫中道。 有一个时候，还有就加一句，有一个时候有话说，佛陀呢，他在那个时候真的疲倦，就不能再用力呢。他听到一个琴，那个琴，这个弹琴的人，他挑这个弦，有的时候太松了就不出声，有的时候太紧的快崩了。他把它调好了，就是刚好，他那个音乐出来了，那刚好就达到中道。所以呢，佛用这个为榜样，他就呵护中道成功。
阿弥陀佛。
All right. I don't have to translate that last. That was done just right. So, excellent. Well, this concludes the first portion of this morning, and we want to express our gratitude to Ajahn Amaro for sharing with us the sweet dew of Dharma and for giving us his insights into the relationship between Abhayagiri and the city of 10,000 Buddhas and the monasteries of Ajahn Sumedho, extending Ajahn Chah's Dharma teaching, Dharma lineage, and also Dharmester Liang for speaking about education. Could we express our gratitude one more time? 我们感谢 Amaro 法师。